the ICS has to be implemented within every single legal entity, like within every clinic, every hospital. This is really a cool solution because this can be integrated in our daily life. The colleagues from the SII have such a good understanding of what we are doing and what our goal is.
Hi Verena, nice to have you here. As the head of controls and monitoring, you're responsible for the ICS tool, but way more than that. Can you elaborate a little bit on your challenges and responsibilities here at Fresenius?
Yes, exactly. Thanks for having me, Holger. Yes, I am part of the Group ICS team, and we are responsible for the rollout, for the implementation, for the development, and also for the monitoring of the group-wide internal control system. From my point of view, we have two major challenges. Like the one challenge is that the Fresenius group is very diverse, like very heterogeneous with regard to operating models, processes, and risks, for example. And on the other hand, we are facing the challenge that the ICS has to be implemented within every single legal entity, like within every clinic, every hospital, and is therefore almost everywhere.
So you mentioned it's everywhere. You also mentioned the hospitals, so like Helios, Quirónsalud. How do they use ICS?
They are not using the ICS tool, so to say, but of course the ICS is implemented within every business segment, therefore also within Helios and Quirónsalud. We have dedicated ICS teams within these business segments, and they have their own structure and their own way to implement the ICS because of the fact I already mentioned that it's so diverse. Every process is different. Like Helios has problems, so to say, with patient safety. Kabi is more looking at production units, like market units, and we from the corporate world are like more a holding function. So every business segment has their own problems and challenges they are facing, and they are doing the rollout like a bit. We are doing it, but they're rolling out the ICS process by process. Like they're having a look, okay, what is state of the art? What are the needs we have? What is important for our patients? Because this is one thing, of course, we are committed to, patient safety. And therefore they're, as I said, rolling out process by process, defining controls, implementing controls, and at least also monitoring their controls.
And looking back into the past, what were your biggest challenges that you have to solve?
The biggest challenge in the past was really when we established the ICS group function, because that's not that long time ago, to find a solution that fits all. Like, as I said, the business segments are very diverse with regard to processes, with risks, because for Helios and Quiron, they have a focus on patient safety. Kabi, for example, is more like inventories and purchase to pay, and like for the production units, and really to find a solution like one inter-control system that covers the whole group.
So you needed flexibility.
Exactly.
And when we developed together with you and your colleagues the ICS tool, so how did that from your perspective work, and what are the benefits especially for you?
So of course we are still in the development phase, and we really hope to roll out at the beginning of next year and just start with a kind of pilot project with regard to like 2 or 3 market units, like only some clinics, because we really have to take care of the people, because right now the ICS is more like a burdensome obligation, so to say, and we really would like the people to accept and to raise awareness for that. So what makes it much more easier was the chance to develop the tool on our own, because on the first day when we decided to go there with an ICS software solution, so to say, we of course had a look on already existing external providers who already established solutions for the ICS, but it quickly became clear that these are not the solutions we could use, because, as I said, because of the diversity, and we need the flexibility, and this is something we have with working with SII and working on our own ICS solution. So still, after 1.5 years, we have more and more requirements from the business segments that we need to consider within the ICS tool, and this is, of course, one major benefit we are having right now, that we can really have a look what is needed. We can really take into consideration what is relevant for Kabi, what is relevant for Helios, and just find the best solution for each business segment. And on the other hand, of course, we have the chance to react in a timely manner on different regulatory requirements, because we also have to take this into consideration with the ICS, because this is a legal requirement we have to fulfill. So having the ICS solution, and we can directly work on it, now we have the chance to directly react on regulatory changes, take into consideration what the business segments needs without being dependent from real, so to say, third-party supply. You are also a kind of supplier, so to say, but the work is so close, and we do not have to wait for like fixed release cycles or so.
As you said, the ICS application is tailored to your needs. But let's make 2 steps back and share with us what is actually the goal for you at Fresenius to have such ICS tool available.
We are using, again, this is diverse, because we are using Excel templates for the documentation of the internal control system. Some of our colleagues are still going with SAP solutions. It quickly became clear that this is not, on the one hand, state of the art, because also the colleagues from the firm and from the risk management are way ahead with regard to the RMS solution. So we decided to go with a more standardized approach. Then we had a look at existing suppliers and existing software solutions, but they did not fit our needs, and then we decided to go with an own developed solution. What is the goal, and this is also the benefit, because we have the chance to tailor it and to custom it and to take our needs into consideration, is that the fact that now the ICS application is going to be used by almost everyone. Like now we are using Excel, but it's only the top. It's only the top documenting the internal control system, and by using the tool, because the goal is that almost every person within the whole Fresenius group who is conducted as a kind of control owner is able and shall use the tool. So we have the chance to really document our control activities within that solution, and not stored in SharePoint or maybe in your desk. It's part of the ICS application. And on the other hand, we have the chance to directly monitor, so to say, to test the control activities. So therefore, we really hope that we will raise the awareness for the internal control system, because it's not like a burdensome obligation we have to fulfill. Of course it is, but not the only thing, because the internal controls are really part of your daily work. Like almost every people running around performs control on a daily basis, and they are so important for making our controls and our processes safer and more efficient. And this is of course one goal, and on the other hand is that it's more, as I said, the awareness and also the acceptance of what we are doing. Because right now, if I say, okay, now, hi, my name is Verena and I'm from the internal control system, it's more like, okay, again, somebody is challenging me, somebody who wants to audit what I'm doing. But this is not the case, because we are part of the structure and of the daily work of most of the people in the Fresenius world.
So am I right that, okay, the tool itself cannot fix culture, but it can help you to work on the risk culture within Fresenius? Exactly,
and on the awareness everybody has. Because now the ICS is more, and this is one of our goals we are having together with the colleagues from the risk management, to really establish a better connection, that not only the risk awareness and the ICS awareness, because it should be fitted and should be linked, because it's, so to say, like having one single source of truth, because we have risk and we have internal controls as a kind of mitigating measure for those risks. And as you said, we need to raise the awareness, and we need to challenge the people that we have to make our processes really safer and, as I said, more efficient.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier that ICS is still in development phase and it's not yet launched, it's not yet in place in Fresenius. But in FIRM, your colleagues shared that they receive also good feedback.
Yes.
Do you, in this current stage, already receive feedback on the solution,
yes,
internally and externally?
Yes, luckily we did. So internally, it's more like we're having a kind of fixed so to say, group, like having colleagues from each business segment, like colleagues from Helios, colleagues from Kabi, and colleagues from the FSE, like this is me in this case. We are working closely together with regard to new features and how we would like the tool to be set up in the future. And on the other hand, so there we received really good feedback. And of course, we just here with some colleagues within the FSE, we did our first checks and checked, okay, how shall we do the rollout? Is it more like a big bang rollout, like everybody needs to use the tool from the 1st of January 2026 or so on? But everyone who are we showing the tool right now said, okay, this is really a cool solution because this can be integrated in our daily life. This is not more another stupid application, so to say, because this is really nice to handle and this is really what we need. Because one thing I maybe forgot to mention is that we have the chance to really remind you via email to perform and to document your control activity. Because it's not like, okay, I have to document the control on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, or I didn't do it for like 4 weeks. Now you receive reminders, and you receive really urgent reminders if you do not perform your control activity. So maybe this makes life much more easier. And of course, the business segments are super happy that we can really, really take their needs into consideration, because we do not have that common ICS approach. Of course, we have the baseline that comes from the ICS group. It's more like Helios does it a bit in their own way, and Kabi has their own ICS approach, and we really have the chance to show the ICS structure within the ICS software.
Verena, you mentioned Quirónsalud and Helios, which are the hospitals within Fresenius Group. And how does the solution and the processes that you have developed, how does it influence the commitment to life? Because it's all about patients' life that is in the hands of Helios and Quirónsalud. Yeah. So how does ICS support you in this regard?
Okay, so the internal control system, or one of the goals of the internal control system, is to make processes safer and more efficient. And of course, this is relatable to all of what we're doing, not only to patient safety, which is important, for example, for Helios and Quirónsalud, but also for the production units for Kabi, like to have a good quality management. But staying at the example from Quirónsalud and Helios with regard to patient safety, the internal control system leads to the fact that everyone knows that he or she has to perform controls. It's not like a control, okay, now I have to write it down and just make tick marks. A control is, as I already explained, integrated in your daily life. For example, that the narcotics are counted on a daily basis. This is a control. And we ensure that these controls are working how they are designed and working effectively. And with a kind of testing or monitoring, after the control is performed, we, or the colleagues in this case from Helios, having a look if the controls were performed as they were designed. So this is a kind of functionality we have to ensure that the processes are running how they are designed, and making them safer and more efficient.
And how will this solution increase the flexibility in reporting and therefore as well the transparency for your management?
Okay, so I think one of our goals, we have a lot of goals, as you can see. One of our goals is that right now, as I said, we are just doing it in Excel, and we write a lot of emails, and we're doing PowerPoints, and on a regular basis we present the results to the management board, for example, and for different committees. It's like we are showing the rollout status and how the controls were performed, and if they performed as they should, or if they, so to say in an ICS speech, whether effective or ineffective. And with the application or with the ICS software, we have the chance to show it by one click, and then all information that is stored within the application can be shown at once, and not me by sending emails and just sizing Excel sheets or so. And the goal is really to have a kind of dashboard. For example, to have a look at, okay, this clinic in Quirónsalud, let me have a look how many controls were performed, how was the testing, and maybe do we have any like a warning lamp, because, for example, all controls within the patient safety process didn't work as they should and were ineffective, because then maybe before anything happens, we are able to having a closer look within that single clinic and maybe to establish kind of mitigating measures.
looking back at the last 1.5 years since we started working with you on ICS, how would you describe the collaboration with us as your development partner?
Okay, I would say I have two words in my mind. On the one hand, it is constructive because we really have the chance to have good discussions, find really good solutions together. And what is really impressive for me, as you may have heard right now, the ICS is not a rocket science, but it's very diverse, and in a world for like a group that Fresenius is, it's not that easy. So the colleagues from the SII have such a good understanding of what we are doing and what our goal is. And sometimes you just have a feature or requirement, they're having a look at it and then they say, okay, Verena, that's not well thought through. That's not how we should realize this. And as I said, we have really good discussions. It's not like only, okay, we say what we would like to have and they're doing it. And afterwards we see, okay, that was not the right solution. We are really like it's on an eye level, so to say. And the other word is collegial, because as it feels right now, we have a really openly and honestly kind of communication, and we had the chance to visit the colleagues just now twice, and it's always like a warm welcome and we're always having a good time.
Nice to hear this positive feedback. This is what we are looking for. This is what we strive for when we're working with Fresenius. But let's not take so much time on looking into the past. Let's probably look into the future. So what else is on your list for the next couple of years? Or let's start with 2026. What kind of features you want to see? Imagine unlimited budget.
I would say without a budget problem. Okay. The one thing is that we would love to expand the use of AI. Currently, we are doing it similar to the colleagues from the risk management system, that we have a kind of solution that directly checks if a kind of description is complete or comprehensive. But this is really only the beginning. I think there's way room for improvement or room for more. So we have different AI solutions on our list, but they haven't reached the SII yet. And the other thing is that we would really love to establish a deeper connection or a deeper link within the risk management solution, so the FIRM app and the ICS solution, because a risk without a mitigating measure, like a control it could be, isn't working, and an internal control system without having risks that we try to mitigate, it's only like the one side of the coin. So we would really like to have that one single source of truth, so to say.
Mm-hmm. So you now mentioned a couple of features, but if you look on the vision, so in 5 years, what you would like to have achieved?
So at first, that everybody knows for what ICS, what it stands for. That's the internal control system, because sometimes we are just struggling with that. So that, as I said, it's just more like integrated in your daily life. It's not only like a burdensome obligation. It's just integrated in what the people are doing during the daily business. It's more of a kind of acceptance of what we're doing. And I'm pretty sure that the tool will make that life much more easier.
Mm-hmm. Verena, thank you for being with us, explaining how ICS works, and also sharing with us a little bit of the roadmap, a little bit of your vision of ICS within Fresenius. Thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for watching this episode of Sii Talks, and stay tuned for the next one, where we also have the chance to talk to another subject matter expert of Fresenius.